I got a big smile because I am so excited for this. I am so excited to go live. It has been way too long since we've hit the airwaves with a live show. I think it was about 3 weeks ago when we had just come back from our trip, having traveled last video. We went to Houston. So it's been a month of travel. It was a weird noise. Does your phone ever make a noise you never knew it could make before? That happens to me periodically. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I've been really excited to do this. This is a treat for me. This is self-service because I just love to hang out with you guys, do a little show and tell, answer any questions you guys have, and just really connect with you guys. And it gives me a chance to remind you how much I love you guys, how much I appreciate you, and just to hear your thoughts. You know what I mean? And give you a little peek behind the curtain. And also, this is the inner circle. If you're in the live or if you're watching the replay of the live, you are somebody who cares beyond just, oh, I want to watch this record player or I want to see a review of this. You're engaging at that next level, which is what I love the most. So you guys are my friends. So I'm glad that you're here. Welcome in. Definitely give me in the chat window. I am going to approach the chat a little differently going forward. Typically, I've been glued to the chat and basically reading through and responding to every comment. And what happens is I get very behind that way. So usually you guys are chatting about something that's happening, in a different point in time than what I'm talking about because I'm so far behind. So I'm going to try to not be glued to every single word and phrase as much. I will definitely still try to read them and respond, but I want to be more focused right here with a viewer watching this. That being said, please give me a shout out in the comments of where you're watching from and say hello if you get a chance to do so. If you're watching the replay, do the same thing in the video comments as well. I always tell people, I always think it's interesting how some people will say, well, I know this is an old video, and they may be commenting on a video from 3 years ago. But the funny thing is the comments come in indiscriminate of what video they're on or when the video was posted. So the comment section of my first video is just as relevant as the comment section on my latest video. Speaking of which, the latest Record-ology video, hey, Leon, is rendering right now. I just got done editing and had some time to jump on. Usually these end up being on Sundays. They're not really planned that way. And we're not like saying, oh, we're going to always go live on a Sunday, but it seems to be a decent time for some people. And, when you've got a global audience like we have, it's a blessing and a curse because it's always a good time for somebody and a bad time for somebody else. So if it doesn't fit with your schedule, I apologize. I'm going to try and do some more mornings for me, live shows and whatnot. But it's been a very productive month for Record-ology, which is surprising considering we've been on the show. We are constantly looking at our statistics, our viewer statistics, demographics, our watch trends. What are people watching? How long are they watching it for? Are the viewers new viewers or return visitor or return viewers? And this past month, we had a larger than usual amount of new visitors, which is great. We are beginning our seasonal trend up to Christmas, I believe. Always kind of starts in October. Now we're in November. I can't believe it. So this is prime time, if there is such a thing, for Record-ology. This is when we are accelerating to Christmas Day, which has traditionally been almost always traditionally been our #1 most viewed day. Now, why is that? Obviously, people are buying record players as gifts, to research the record player or the record, the old radios, and do some research. And they're more of a transactional viewer, and I welcome all viewers. I don't care, if you're transactional or you're more invested in the relationship. and then they're gone. You know, they're on to something else. They may not be into record players, but they were buying one for a friend, and they want to do a little research to see if it's any good. Then you got the people that just got a record player, and a lot of people that get record players like them, like super into vinyl, so they may not stick around. So for whatever reason, now advertisers as well will, you know, I don't know if the frequency changes, but the advertising, this is sort of peak season for advertising, which is actually a really good thing for you, because you may say, what? The ads are not my favorite part. But the reason why it's good for you is companies want their products reviewed more than ever this time of the year, which means we have a lot of cool stuff to look at. So definitely been having some conversations with folks, and I hope that they come to fruition in the form of a video to review, because that's what we do here. So both records, record players, and there's been some interesting stuff. It's kind of funny. I get every night now. I get, and I say night because a lot of times they're overseas organizations, will contact me for a potential review, and the email always starts off like this. Now, sometimes they won't take the time to. It's a form message. Sometimes they'll leave it blank, and it'll be like, "Dear creator, I am a big fan of your videos." So they won't fill out the details. Like, come on, at least fill out the form letter, because you know they're sending out thousands of these a night, hoping it'll stick. But I always like, it's like, "Dear Record-ology, I am a huge fan of your channel, been watching for years, and I just know that our brand and your channel, your audience are the perfect fit. And let me tell you all about our product. We are a company that specializes in," and then it gets really entertaining, because they don't, there are some that do. You know, we do get the companies that genuinely realize what our audience is about, what you guys are interested in, and, you know, what we're really doing here. And then you got the ones that are like our new pot holder collection, our new heated thermoses, rubber bed sheets, what, you know, just it's the weirdest. I should collect the weirdest, most bizarre things: kids' toys, bicycle parts, liquid containers. I had a company that was contacting me because we were the perfect channel to review their liquid extraction devices. They were like syringes. It's like crazy. So there is a lot of chaff, I guess you would say, a lot of fluff, but in there are the seeds of potential products that we would want to review. So I sift through it and try to find the best things. Keith, welcome in. Welcome in, everybody. Paul, welcome in from Gettysburg. Wow. That is, I'm a big history buff. That's really interesting. Leon, first chat for me. Welcome to everybody that hasn't never been here in a chat before. It's a different format. I always tell my wife, go 30 minutes, maybe an hour. And then I look back and it's been an hour and a half, sometimes close to 2. It's a very informal, I'm just wiping my nose because it's informal. We can do that on a live show. Basically, you guys lead the show. I have a few things I want to cover, some announcements, some news. Like I said before, you guys are the real ones, so I want to make sure that I give you sneak peek information, behind the scenes stuff. This is where we do giveaways. We give away turntables, record players. All of those things happen in the context of a live show. And that also upticks during the holiday season. And there's already a pile of turntables that may end up being giveaway items here on the show. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, it's just an informal thing. We just hang out. We just have fun. And I love answering questions and interacting with you guys. Or if you don't want to do that, just sit back and listen to me drone on. I've heard that I'm really nice if you're trying to fall asleep and you need some boring sound, or if you're vacuuming and you just need to kill the time or whatever. I'm here to help in any way I can. Went to McKay's for the first time recently. Ended up finding a Mozart record tape for 25 cents each. Wow. Found the 2 REM CDs. Very scratched section. There's a very scratched section. That's interesting. Hey, that's cool though. And a 10 Glenn Miller box set for night. Wait a minute. A 10 CD Glenn Miller box set. It wasn't the limited edition one with the black and the gold lettering. That's really interesting. Retro reviewer. No, I've been doing these for years, ever since the channel's been around. Jaime, welcome in. Gary, welcome in. Not too late for you tonight. Yeah, I'm falling behind. I still need to see a Knox video. Dude, you would love those. Go check them out. There's 3 of them now. There's the one we just did, and there's the 2 from 2022. When we were there, I was talking to him, and I was like, and I had been to Houston since seeing him in 2022, at least once, probably 2 times, without visiting him. Now, a lot of it had gone on. I had a lot of the medical stuff going on. So it was kind of in a different world, a different realm. But it really surprised me when I thought back and realized it had been 2 years since I visited Kurt's place. And but it made for a good video because things had changed. There was different stuff. And you can watch those in any order, by the way. What speakers do you use for everyday listening? Josh says. Josh, welcome in. I get asked this. I've reviewed quite a few speakers now. We're not a speaker channel like Cheap Audio Man. That being said, fantastic, successful. That guy's channel has grown, like the speed of which his trajectory, even like Techmoan, you know, it took 10 years to really hit the big time. But this guy's doing really, really good. Anyway, I personally use a Fluence AI41. And that is 5-inch driver, 1-inch silk tweeter. They've got the I think is it a carbon fiber? It looks like a carbon fiber driver, nice thick rubber surrounds. It's got a sub output, which I run to a Victrola branded, I don't know who really makes it, subwoofer, front firing subwoofer, and just a little kick of bass. These have good bass. They're ported and everything. They got Bluetooth in. They have a digital volume control on the front. They come with a remote. In fact, here's the remote for the Fluence. But they're the best sounding speaker by far. I have not yet heard, and I've reviewed quite a few speakers. I have not heard a lot of speakers that sound as good as these do. They're a well-rounded design. Sound profile is very rich, but there's plenty of highs and mids. You get the full spectrum. And I've reviewed a lot of kind of the entry to mid-level powered speakers. So I would definitely recommend these. I think Fluence's stuff all the way around is good. Right now on my left, I've got usually I have 3 turntables at my beck and call that I work. This is my workspace as well as, you know, stuff I do for the channel. So my day job, as it were. So I've got 3 turntables I like listening to while I work. Right now on my left, I've got the Fluence RT81 Plus, and all of these have been reviewed. So if you're interested, go check out the videos. I love this thing. It's beautiful. I think the upgrades for the Plus were worth it. So basically the platter's damped. It's got a foam insert. That's what that means. It comes with an acrylic platter mat instead of the felt one. It still has the lower grade motor setup where the belt are under the platter. The higher end ones have an external like the RT85, which we also reviewed. Fluence turntables are fantastic. We reviewed the 80, the 81 Plus now, and the 85N, and all of them were great. And like U-turn, the difference from the lowest end to the highest end is so minimal that, you know, you really get a quality turntable. So yeah, and what's really cool, and when I was doing some research on the RT81 Plus, I got I think it's walnut colored. It's like a very brown wood color, very high gloss, piano gloss to it. They have a matching platform, and I've never reviewed a turntable platform before. And it matches perfectly. So I'm going to hopefully be reviewing that soon. Duke Audio phono preamp with the tubes, 2 GE tubes, I believe. And like I said, yeah, Fluence AI41s. So good afternoon, good evening. Yeah, a lot of people prefer the old stuff for sure. Jerry, welcome in. Yes, thank you very much. If you haven't already, thumbs up, please. It would really help our stream. It would help YouTube, and to know that we are here, and hopefully propagate the link. And subscribe if you guys haven't done so yet. Definitely subscribe. Would love to have you participate in the lives where we do these giveaways and things, and the regular videos. There will be a regular video posted this evening is the plan. It's rendering as we speak. In fact, give you a live status of the render. We are at 56% render, 34.5 minutes left. It's been rendering for 44 minutes. I don't have the most powerful laptop to render, and I shoot. Our cameras are all 4K compatible, but we actually have the show at 1080p because it's kind of a good average medium in terms of resolution and quality, and then space size, efficiency, and speed for renders and things like that. We did a little phase where I was doing the 4K, but what I was finding is a lot of people have their resolution on YouTube set to automatic anyway, so they weren't seeing it in 4K. So anyway, there you go. More than you wanted to know. The grip for the Bolex, that's awesome. Hey, Joseph, welcome in. Joseph sporting the highlighted name, also the R emoticon graphic little picture thing, because Joseph is a member of the membership group, the program, the inner circle. There it is. I knew I'd get there eventually. For 99 cents a month, you too can join and help support the channel. Plus, get early access to videos, exclusive content, and just, help support the channel. Are you in your basement? No, I am not, actually. I am not in my basement. I've got a lot of daylight coming in. It's not from like one of those windows up in the top there. So I know, and it's funny, I was just talking about other YouTube channels that are like Frank, channel 33, he's in his basement, which is cool. It's just not the way I'm set up right now. This is an interesting question, Retro Reviewer. Do you treat your record players and such as just machines, or do you personify them a bit? That's not, it's not a weird question. It's a very interesting one. Now, I am a person who names my car. I'm very, I love animals. I love, I'm a very, how do I say this? Anyway, I would be a person that would personify, like, I don't know, personify is the right word, but basically assign maybe a nickname or something to something. I don't for record players. I don't say like, oh, this is Charlie. Charlie's one of my favorites. He's a good boy. I don't do that. But that's interesting. I had never been asked that before. Never been asked that before. That's funny. For some reason, cars, I do that more. We do name our cars. I get to hear K-Star twice a day at work. Tell me why. Is it because of the Christmas song, The Man with the Bag? I just listened to that today, by the way. That's funny. Yeah, well, the investment you make in them, you kind of have to pamper them. You want them to last, right? Christmas records, I am too. And I know I'm catching grief because you got the people like, oh, we don't do Christmas in our house till December 1st. I'm just not like that. I've always been a Christmas freak, always. Somebody say something about the pictures in the background. I don't want to. I'm trying not to be glued in the comments, but at the same time, I don't want to feel bad or make anybody feel bad because I missed a comment. Oh, love the signs. Yeah, thank you. These are just modern Amazon specials. This one arrived with a crease in it. Yeah, those are not vintage. I do have some vintage signage, though. If I could pan the camera. In fact, let's do this. Okay. If I go a little bit this way with the camera, you can see I've got some more vintage things over there, including my latest edition up there. I've got a Bing Crosby autograph. Used to have my calendar up there, but I have that Bing Crosby autograph. I think it's a reproduction. They said it was authentic, but I don't think so. Maybe that's fun. Halloween records, I know, and I will play that Charlie Brown pumpkin-shaped record any time of the year, but definitely well into Christmas. Record players are they can be expensive, but I would say if you're looking for a record player and you're on a budget, I would recommend thrift stores. If you just keep an eye on thrift stores, eventually one will pop up there, in my experience. And that's usually where you get the best deal on stuff. And I like my tape deck. If I were to find this tape deck on eBay or, other places, it would have cost me way more than it did at the thrift store. It was like $7. CD players too, like my 5-disc Sony CD changer. It was, again, a very reasonable price. So keep a lookout there. It can be done. It's worth the wait. You'll find a killer deal. Michelle, welcome in. Are cassette decks becoming popular again? That's a good question. So it's been a few years now that cassettes have really started to pick up some steam and popularity. And I don't know, like I just don't see it doing what vinyl's doing. I don't really know why, because the children of the 80s and 90s, cassettes were really our format, people of my same age. I definitely had records as a kid. But by the time, the mid to late 80s and early 90s rolled around, it was, you really weren't, unless you were just super into vinyl or you're an audiophile or whatever, you wanted the latest and greatest technology. So you were well into cassettes. So I had a lot of cassettes, and that was just the way to do it. It was also good because you could record in that as well. You could make, people talk about mixtapes. And everything's a mixtape. I got this mixtape and that mixtape, and I share mixtapes, and I do this. We never did that. A real child of the 80s never made a mixtape. Maybe some people did. I never made a mixtape. What I did do was dub albums of my friends, or probably more common than that, I would record off the radio in hopes of getting the song that you wanted to get. What I would typically do is call up the radio station and make a request. And when you did that, it would take usually a good hour or so before that song would get played. And then once it did, you'd be recording and hopefully catch it. And that wasn't the greatest quality, but it was better than nothing. And and then duplicating your friend's tape. So your friend gets a copy of it. You're 12 years old, you don't have a lot of money or any money. So if somebody gets an album and you have a blank tape, there you go. I do know some people had fancy stereo setups, and they would make an attempt at a mixtape. But this idea of that mixtapes were everywhere, and that's where we listened to it. No, mostly we just wanted studio or pre-recorded cassettes. That's what we wanted. We wanted pre-recorded cassettes. Anything else was a stopgap. I like cassettes, though. I like tape. Beatles, Victrola, Talking Machine Company, Edison's. I know I've got it all covered back there, don't I? Joseph says, surprisingly, cassettes are becoming popular again. And I've seen it like, what was the store? Oh man, they sell like Crosley tape players, basic record players, and usually 3 cassettes, probably Taylor Swift, and a couple others. And what's the one, the Guardians of the Galaxy, the Netflix series or whatever that was popular, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But I feel like those people aren't really getting into it. To them, it's like a toy. I don't know if they're really into it. They're like, are they really going to go buy a bunch of old tapes? I don't know. Maybe they are. But so I see it kind of spiking up. Also, I know that there's a spike in used CD purchases because people are, that also are from my generation and went running as fast as possible from cassettes into CDs. When we learned we could skip, we had pure digital sound with no hiss and all those good things. And we're going to talk about CDs quite a bit today, actually, because I got some stuff to show you. We didn't look back. I never thought I'd play a tape ever again. And I always tell this story, but I remember when I was well into my CD era, as everybody says now, thanks Taylor Swift. And I wanted the Michael Jackson History album. This is like 95-ish. And I think I was working fast food or something. I couldn't afford that. I couldn't afford the CD. The CD was like, those were premium prices for new CDs at that point. It's like $29. I was no way I was going to afford that. I was probably paying bedroom rent or something. So I could afford the cassette. And I remember thinking to myself, I felt so bummed that I had the cheap cassette. And yes, I still had my tape player, my little Iowa shelf system, which was my sound system, Had a tape player still, but you know, it was a sacrifice for what I really wanted, which was a CD. Never thought I would go back. And then once MP3s came around, I was like, see ya, CDs. And thankfully I kept almost all of them. I did make the mistake of decasing almost all of my CDs and putting them in little slip sheet cases because they were easier to store and they were more compact. Kept the liner notes, but I threw away the jewel cases, and I really regret that. So I've been building up CDs again and keeping all the packaging. But yeah, I can hit 10,000 songs on this thing. Great. You know, it's wonderful. Plus, I listen to old music, like big band music and a lot of stuff, old-time radio shows. You know, if it's lower resolution than the analog original or the uncompressed CD, whatever, then, you know, it wasn't an issue for me. So I really went, you know, I came from analog roots. I went full digital with CDs, and even more so with streaming and MP3s and, you know, MP3 players and iPods, thinking I would never look back. And then, lo and behold, here we are again. Have you ever thought of building an Edison phonograph cylinder recorder? I have thought about it. I was part of the impetus for me getting back into this and starting this channel was I got addicted to watching the videos of the Victrola guy, who's back, by the way. He's back producing again, which is great. Hope his other channel, Ben's Trains, also picks up again, vintage train stuff. But he was talking about, oh yeah, you could. What I liked about him is he wasn't like, you have to use a premium, you know, the real original parts. He was like, well, this, you know, oil funnel from Walmart makes a good horn and stuff like that. I love that. He has that attitude where you can just make it work and on a budget. And so I remember one time he was like, you know, you can make a phonograph with just a bent nail. That's what he said, spinning the cylinder record. So I remember going out to this is funny to remember. I remember going out to my garage and looking out there at my workbench and being like, huh, I wonder if I could do this. I just need to spin something or rotate something, depending on if it's a cylinder or disc, and then a bent nail and some way to, you know, obviously it's not as simple as that. You need a diaphragm. You need, you know, it's not quite that simple. It can be done. I know there's kits and things like the little plastic cup phonograph and things, but beyond that, no, I haven't really thought of it. I don't have any cylinder phonographs. The coin-operated Columbia one that we showed in the Kurt Knock video at Houston is so cool. I think it actually didn't sell in the auction. He has, and I think he still has, a unsold sale going where you can go to 78rpm.com, which I would recommend doing. And you can buy the leftovers, and there's a lot of leftovers. That phonograph, I think, is going for $3,000, maybe $5,000, and didn't get picked up. I think it's beautiful. It's pristine. But no, I don't have any cylinder phonographs. I have one cylinder record, which is a display piece. Cassettes. Yep, at Walmart. I remember that. And the long cases, because they had all the long box, the 12-inch record shelves still. So they had. I always wondered, why do they have these tapes and CDs have these long packaging things? And now it makes perfect sense. It's the 12-inch record shelves were designed for it. 1992 to 2019, CDs were the best-selling audio format. Yeah, Bradley, welcome in, by the way. Another member of our inner circle. So glad. Thankful for member support. Joseph said there's a massive downside of cassette tapes. There's a big risk of destroying them. Yeah, and even still, you know, it's like, is it going to bust? You know, it's almost as nervous as I feel about playing an 8-track tape. Does anyone else think it would be cool if an audio cassette could be read by a laser instead of a magnetic head? That's interesting. Huh. Yeah, that would be interesting. I know that there were record players that used a laser to read the groove instead of a needle. I got people's old mixtapes. Yeah, a lot of people would buy a new record, record it to tape, and then shelve the record to protect it, and then just play the tape to death, and then make another copy to protect their vinyl. Digital compact cassettes. Yeah, there's so many formats. Did you have an all-in-one system from the 80s or 90s? Says Jaime. I like one of these like rack-mounted systems. We never did. No. So that kind of is a good segue into what I'm going to talk about here. No, we never had like one of those big cabinet stereo systems, the big floor speakers. My stereo as a kid was a hand-me-down boombox or something small. It was never, we never had a family stereo system. The last family stereo system we had was probably mid to early 80s. My parents had like one of those clarinets from Radio Shack where it was like the BSR mechanism, tape player, and radio all in one kind of a deal, and some very, very basic speakers. But my parents were both musicians, are both musicians. And so we had audio equipment for like mics and PV amplified speakers and things for performing. And yes, you could have a hookup to that. But no, my personal audio setup was, usually like a boombox type of a thing, nothing that fancy. So no, we never had that kind of stuff. We never had a 5-disc changer. I don't think our family ever had a CD player. My mom's stereo system, she always would put it above the refrigerator, and it was usually like it was. I remember it once was a boombox, one of those Sanyo thin double cassette boom boxes with the EQ on top. And then when she got done with that, that was a hand down, which would I get? That would be what I would get. And then I remember she had a Fisher. It was a boom box, but the speakers did detach. A lot of chrome, Fisher Studio Series boom box with detachable speakers. She had that up there, but she was never like, oh my gosh, I'm going to listen to my music and critical listening and all that. For her, music was having K-Love, which was the Christian radio station in Denver, playing on a 24-hour loop on a low-level volume in the background. And that was her music consumption, or a radio in the car. My dad was traditionally not as much into music. He was a singer. He played guitar. Both of them did, and sing and all that stuff. Fantastically talented. But he, rather than listening to music as much, would mostly listen to books on tape. He devours listening to books on tape and things like that. So he always have like a Walkman and headphones, and that's where he would listen. Instead of playing albums. So I would have a boombox. I've always loved music and listened to a lot of it. It is more fun. I agree. Oh, that's really interesting over radios. That's cool. Yep. A lot of us did the CD case thing. Man, it seems so cool. It's like, oh man, I can fit all my CDs in this small space. And then I missed the jewel case, the packaging. Making mixtapes in 2004 from songs off Sirius Radio. A lot of people love mixtapes, and that's cool. There was a viewer of ours, and what was her name? DJ Trish, I think. Was her name DJ Trish? Anyway, yeah, she was one of our viewers, and she has a whole community of people that make mixtapes and share them with each other, which is really neat. It's just not what I did. All right, I'm going to peel myself out. I can't stay out of the comments because that's where I'm interacting with you guys. So I love CDs, and I love records too. It is a record channel, but we do all sorts of formats. And I showed you that in Denver, a couple of videos I talked about this little guy I picked up. This is an Emerson CD player, ultimate skip protection. This is circa 2004. So this is a 20 years vintage unit. I can't believe that. It would be representative of an entry-level product. Emerson obviously has been around for a long time, but this one has a cool battery compartment under the lid, and it's fully featured, which to me means it can be, there's different EQ modes. You can program the tracks. You may say that's full featured, but some CD players you can't do that, surprisingly. And it's a cool little unit. I picked it up for $6 at a Goodwill or someplace in Denver, and I didn't know if it worked or whatnot. I did have a CD back at my hotel room. Tried it out, and it was skipping like crazy. It worked better when the ESP or electronic skip protection was engaged. So oftentimes what you need to do when CD players act up is just take some isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip or something, clean off that lens, and you're good to go. Also, that's the case with the bigger component systems. But it didn't really work for this. So this unit right now is kind of iffy, and I may need to lubricate the rails for the transport. So, but again, $6 gamble pays off. It looks cool. If it wasn't blue, I might not have picked it up. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, but it's still a cool looking player. Now, as an early birthday present, a friend of mine gifted me a CD player, which is on the other end of the spectrum. It is a premium CD player. This is a circa 1994. What is this thing? This is a D465 Sony. Now, if you lived through the compact disc boom, there was, first you've got, boom boxes with CD players built in, component systems with CD players built in. But there was this big push, especially with young people, for personal CD players, where you could take them with you specifically to high school or junior high, which is what I did. And they made little purses, which we got made fun of for carrying around. And you could bring 3 or 4 CDs and listen to them between classes in the library. And it was this whole thing. You go to Circuit City, you go to Sears, and there are 400,000 different Sonys alone. Then there's Philips, and there's Panasonics, and it was amazing how I remember especially the CD player section at Circuit City, and it was amazing. But there was two worlds of CD players. There were the high-end stuff that was expensive, hundreds of dollars, and then you had the entry-level products, which were more plasticky and oftentimes less featured than the higher-end heavy-duty metal ones like this. My entire existence of compact discs in the 90s was limited to entry-level products. So when I got my first personal portable CD player, it was the Sony D131. This was the entry-level, bottom-of-the-line product for the Discman range. Discman eventually was rebranded to CD Walkman, I think, but they got rid of the Discman terminology. So the D131 was the 94 model. Previous that was the D121. After this was the D141. Can you guess what the one after that was? The D151. And actually, I think they stopped that naming convention at that point. So this is not really, and it is to a degree, but it's not a descendant of like the D5 and all this like high-end, Sony CD players. This is a new range of entry-level CD players. That being said, this is still a super high-quality player, and it works to this day. Fully featured, it's got an AVLS setting for volume limiting. It's got a line output jack, not just a headphone out, but a line output jack, and you can power it off of an AC power supply or the 2 AA batteries, which was, some of the cheaper ones would require 4 batteries, but if you got a higher end player, you could run it off of 2 batteries and whatnot. The D141 that came a year later added a window so you could see the CD spinning. I never really cared about that, so I'm perfectly fine not seeing the CD spin. But yeah, this is a great CD player. I spent many, many good hours of enjoyment listening to music on this device. The same year, the 1994 is when the D465 came out. So these are the same vintage, but opposite ends of the spectrum. I have not been able to decide and learn if this was the top of the line, but it certainly was near it. So instead of having plastic components, this has a metal lid. So it's more durable. It's probably more heat resistant. Some of the Sony variants actually said heat resistant lid on the top, which is interesting. This one doesn't. But yeah, so it's super exciting to get this as an early birthday present. The feature set is not too different. It's got a headphone jack, but as you can see, it also accommodates the line-in remotes where you had the little screen and the volume control on the remote. It's got an AVLS. Let's see. AVLS switch is on the bottom. I always have that off. 2 AA batteries. It's much heavier. It also has 2 contact points on the back there. I think that was probably for an external battery pack or some accessory. There's also this little opening, which kind of looks like a computer lock. I'm not 100% sure what that is. I'm also not 100% sure what this is. Perhaps some sort of adjustment. But yeah, it's got a real analog tuning dial. A lot of modern CD players will just have a digital thing, which I don't appreciate as much. But this thing is slick. Now check this out. We got the ESP. So that's electronic skip protection. And back in those days, CD players were really judged by the ESP. The 131 didn't have anything. There was no anti-skip on that. But it was all based on how much you could jog or move it around in between getting skips. And you didn't want skips. You wanted skipless playback. So, cheap anti-skip systems were like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. This one has 20 seconds. Keeping in mind, this is 94. So a 20-second anti-skip, ESP is what they call it. And this is a lossless anti-skip. So full resolution buffer. One of the biggest complaints that people have with modern anti-skip is that you can't turn it off. And the reason why that's a bad thing, I don't have a modern one up here, is that a lot of times the modern anti-skip systems buffer the audio into a lossy compression. So it plays the CD faster than real time, loads the audio into RAM, and plays it back as an MP3 file or something that's lossy. But this old school electronic skip protection is actually lossless. So it's really, really cool. And this is cool. So check this out. This little thing slides up to remove the buttons or to reveal the buttons, which have a nice beep. This is actually backlit. This is a backlit luminescent blue display, very futuristic for the time. So yeah, this was a huge blessing. By the way, I have an interesting CD in there. I've been continuing down my rabbit hole of Bing Crosby and Friends. So I've got this Bob Hope and Friends CD from a 2-disc set. Another great segue. And I'm loving this set. I bought this new on Amazon. It was actually in stock at my local Amazon warehouse. I got it next day with Prime, which is amazing that this is stocked. And I know Big Bob Hope is huge, but I'm still kind of surprised that I can have this, next day availability. It's a 2 CD set, Jasmine label. Anytime you see a CD that has cedar on it, that's like a noise reduction and sound enhancement technology that was popular in the 90s. And this is cedar is great. Some of the best Glenn Miller were restored with the cedar system. Booklets in there and everything. So that's really cool. Also recently picked up this. I purchased this by accident. This is a Dorothy Lamour, also part of the Bing Crosby and Friends group. You can see some of the other artists in the series. This is a 2001 issue. It's also a 2-disc set. What happened was I put an offer on this, and the offer was it was a lowball offer. I know, but the worst they can say is no. Put a lowball offer on this, and the 24 hours had gone by, and I thought my offer had expired, so I went and bought a different CD. That one has yet to arrive. And then at the same time, I found out that the one I originally put an offer down was coming too. So I'm getting 2 CDs. That's fine. That's a happy problem. So yeah, the Bing Crosby, and I showed this CD before. I also got this in Denver, has now kind of blossomed into me exploring the music and films of these 3. And I love, and I showed it before. I'm going to show it again. The road movies with Bing and Bob. They're so much fun. If you like a buddy film, they're great. There's a few of them. There's 7 in total. I think 3 of them are available on YouTube for free. But if you want like an old school buddy film, they are fun. These 4, you have to get them on disc. They're not available on YouTube. So there's some great entertainment there. So I'm loving this. I love this stuff. So I love when you learn about something because you get interested in something, and then that leads to something else, and that leads to something else. So yeah, that's the CD player situation. a couple of editions over the past. So on the topic of CDs, before I forget, if you're a Glenn Miller fan, you don't have this yet, you owe it to yourself to pick this up. It's kind of pricey. It's $29. You have to go to the Glenn Miller Birthplace Society. Birthplace. Somebody watched last time I talked about this. They were like, "Did you say first place?" Birthplace Society, and they sponsored this. It's made, I believe, by Sony Special Products, or at least in conjunction with them. These are actual pressed discs, not burned discs, and it's a limited release. You can see on the back there that it's not burned. And what's really neat is this is all material that you've really never had a chance to hear before. These come from private transcriptions that were made for the Miller estate. And the sound quality on these, they're Chesterfield shows, is like nothing you have ever heard before. And I've heard it all. I've heard the best restoration of Glenn Miller music. If you are into big band music, especially Glenn Miller, I guarantee you this is like unlike anything. It justifies a $29 price tag. Check the booklet's huge. It's got so many pictures and things. But anyway, that's cool stuff. So that's what I've been listening to a lot lately. That CD player also came with this. Don't ask me what those spots are, but they don't wipe off. So yeah, a CD player with its own little neoprene sleeve, which is kind of fancy. And then I also received this of these two, the CD player and this, and other things that will be on the show eventually were part of the same gift. This vintage mini disc player. If you guys know my mini disc saga, it hasn't been a good one. Every mini disc player I've had has a problem. From my component Sony to every portable I've tried, like this Sharp, everyone dies, has died, is dying. And so he's like, I got this one I'll give you. It is not pretty. As you can see, it's yellowed, but it works flawlessly. This is a NetMD player. So NetMD, this is like circa 2004. And you may be like, what? Did it last that long? This was Minidisc's dying breath as it faded to obscurity. And this device allowed you to connect it via USB to a computer and use it as a random access drive, like a USB thumb drive, drag and drop files that you could play back. Traditionally, Minidisc was not like that. It was, you would record in real time, play back in real time, et cetera, et cetera. Minidisc is also a compressed format. It uses something called A-Track 3, and really cool. I like the colored discs as well. So it's like a little optical disc in a cartridge. And what's neat about it is it's actually not just it uses a magnet like a tape recorder and a laser like a CD to play back. It's like an optical I think it's called optical magneto technology. So it uses a magnet head like a tape player to record, and then it plays back with a laser. It's really interesting technology. Much bigger in the UK than it was here in the States. But anyway, so I need to play with this still. And yeah, it's not the prettiest thing you've ever seen, but it's cool. And I'm thankful to hopefully have one that actually works. My favorite format of mini disc was actually LP. You can see on this one, right by the screen there, it says MDLP. This was a technology that was sort of a second generation of the original mini disc technology that allowed you to record in SP mode or like I don't know what the terminology was, but basically modes that allowed you to have more record time at the expense of quality. Similar to a VHS tape where you could record in SP for premium quality, LP or SLP for lower quality, but you got a lot more record time. And so it was really handy for recording movie sounds, because you guys know I collect movie sounds, movies that I own for my own use, and I like to listen to those. And this was a really cool way to do that before I changed the way I was doing it. So anyway, this was another gift, and I'm excited to play with it. Hopefully that, unlike my other mini disc experiences, will work. So yeah, there you go. That's what I wanted to kind of talk to you about. Now let me get back to comments and anything else you guys want to talk about before I completely lose my voice. Let me drink some water, put these back down here. The all-new all-in-one record players that have CD drawers, FM radio, Bluetooth, cassette are very cool because you have the choice of what format you want to listen to. And that's where I started. My first review on this channel was actually a Victrola all-in-one. They're cool. They're really cool. And you're right. You have everything, including speakers. If you don't have a stereo system, a legacy stereo system that you're trying to hook up to, you don't want a big setup. You're going to sacrifice. It's always quality over convenience. And like Techmoan said recently, people always choose convenience. Always. That's why VHS won over Beta. That's why VHS won over VHS-C. That's why MP3s won out over CDs. That's why streaming is so popular, because people are willing to sacrifice a little bit of quality because they'll look at it and be like, yeah, or listen to it and be like, yeah, it sounds good to me. It's fine. That's good enough. Good enough. You know what I mean? That's a good enough mindset. So if you are willing to not get the best record player quality, then not the best speaker quality, but you like the cool retro vibes, you like the fact that it's all in one spot, then more power to you. I think that's cool, and I fully support people that want to go down that route. And I think it is cool. It is fun. Absolutely. I have some London Christmas 78s I want. That's cool. London records are premium. I like London records too. I was talking to someone who Streamline cassette. I remember Streamline cassettes. It was amazing that you could have a case that was a little bit narrower. Laser turntables are expensive, and from what I understand, the records have to be pristine because any dust will mess it up bad. Digital compact cassettes use a thin film head. Interesting. Still have my massive stereo system in my living room today. That's cool. I remember my friend had one, and it's the first time I really had heard really good sound. Obviously, when I went to like youth group at church and stuff, they'd have good stereo equipment, but he had like the floor to ceiling, not floor to ceiling, that'd be amazing. He had like the floor standing speakers. I remember playing Super Nintendo on that thing, and the bass was just incredible. I also remember he had a copy of the soundtrack to the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, and how cool that sounded on those big speakers. My parents didn't have anything like that, which was fine. It was just a different thing. My aunt and uncle had it too. We used to go over to my aunt and uncle's house for Christmas Eve. And I remember one year, this would have been like 92. I think it would have been a Christmas of 91 into 92. This was the year when I transitioned to CDs, and I thought I would never look back. And what happened was I became hyper fixated like I always do on something. And that year it was CDs. It was starting to become popular at school. And it was the new technology. And obviously, yeah, I know CDs were introduced in the late 70s and were available all throughout the 80s. But there's always this delay from when things are introduced to when they really become mainstream. And for CDs, that was the early 90s. The 90s is when most people finally made the leap into CDs. And if you are in public school, especially in junior or high school, the latest technology is cool. It's trendy. It's what people are doing. I was never cool. I was never trendy. I could never afford the high-end stuff, high-end clothes, which was fine by me. But I was always interested in wanting to, be in that upper echelon of the cool kids. So CDs were so popular that year, I remember. And I think, I sometimes think I had a CD before I had a CD player. Maybe not. No, I don't think I actually did. But I remember thinking maybe I'd buy one just so I could say I had a CD. They were that cool. And from a technology standpoint, it was such a novel idea to be able to skip tracks, to skip songs. Now, I know on a record player you could do that, but record players for kids in that era were about the dorkiest thing. If you talked about a record player, you'd get laughed at. It just is the way it was, at least for anybody I knew. So, yeah, you can skip tracks and instantly rewind a song on a record. We know that now. But back then, we're comparing things to tapes because everything was tapes. Well, about that time, it became not cool to be the kid with a Walkman at school. You wanted to be the kid with a CD player. And I don't remember at first people having, like portables like this. Not really until the later 90s when I was in high school. But I do remember people talking about CDs, and it was still a big, big deal. So that particular Christmas, I drove my parents insane with my obsessive compulsive absolute fanaticism about CDs, hyper fixated, research, talking about it around the clock. These are still traits that I carry to this day. And that Christmas Eve, we went to, again, this is 91, Christmas of 91 into 92. As was our tradition, we went to a good time to do a Christmas story when we're kicking off the Christmas season around here at Record-ology. On Christmas Eve, and they had a component stereo system with the big speakers. Now, my aunt and uncle, they are still with us, praise God, and they love country music. So what did they have? They had for me to listen to on their stereo system that also had a CD, a single disc CD player, which of course I didn't hang out with the family that Christmas. I hung out with the CD player because I was hyper fixated on it. They had the Hank Williams box set, this big box set. It wasn't just like a long box like this. It was like a double size long box. It was like, take two regular long boxes side by side. Yes, I have 2 copies. Actually, I have 3 copies, but this was the size of the box, of the Hank Williams box. And I was fascinated. I probably looked really interesting to people walking by, the family walking by, like, what is that kid doing in there? Like, why is, like, it was the case. It was like, you know, the idea of a digital sound. And I know that sounds so absurd today. Like, yeah, digital, it's, you know, convenient, but, you know, we like analog here at Record-ology. You know, I get that. The irony is what partially makes this a great story. But the idea of an optical disc, and there's music on here. How is there music on here? And it's digital, and it never wears out, and I can listen to it over and over. I just savored. I didn't even like Hank Williams at the time. I like Hank Williams now a lot. But I was listening. I had finally found that CD set, not the same box version, but I have that CD set somewhere I picked up a couple of years ago. Absolutely just listen to that, the skipping tracks and learning how it works. And it's so funny that was so interesting to me. And yeah, so on the way home, I don't know why I did this, but I think I was, again, talking about CD players, and they were probably like, hey, little Record-ology, why weren't you with the family? And, you know, you should have spent more time with your aunt and uncle, and you only get to see them, you know, every so often and all stuff. But it was very on brand for me to just do what I did. But they said something they were really good. Every year at my house when I grew up, every Christmas this is going to be a small Christmas. Just so you know, don't get your hopes up. This is going to be a small Christmas. We can't really afford much this year. And there were a couple Christmases that were small. Usually we did okay. Not absurd, but, you know, we were blessed to not be, you know, we weren't, although my mom still likes putting apples and oranges in the stockings and buffing up the look of the Christmas tree when you come down the stairs with every extended family gift known to man. You know, she did a really good job of facing product and, you know, making it look bigger than it really was. We get halfway through, I'm like, why are we stopping? Well, this is for the families. You know, then we would go visit family. Like, we put that under the tree? I thought it was our stuff. Anyway, so they were on brand doing their act of, it's going to be a small Christmas. And somehow I got out of my mind that I wasn't getting a CD player. After all of the begging and hinting and obsessing that I had done, I was a very annoying child, and I'm an annoying human too to this day as an adult, so it works. But I just started throwing a fit. I was like being sarcastic. I was being rude. I was convinced I wasn't getting a CD player after all that. I woke up the next morning, and there was a CD player under the tree for me. It was a boombox. We've reviewed it. I've got it still. I bought another one like this. I don't have the original actual unit I had, but I've got the same model I had. And I felt really bad about doing that. But that was the year of CD conversion for me. I got 2 CDs that day. Stephen Curtis Chapman and a Run DMC. No, I bought the Run DMC with my Christmas money. But I got Stephen Curtis Chapman and Garth Brooks. And those are my first 2 CDs. And then my third one I bought on my own money, which is Run DMC. There you go. That's how I converted 2 CDs. And the rest is history. That was my origin story for compact discs. Film strips were read by light. Yeah, the optical system for film playback was. I worked in projection too. I also worked in film and television broadcast. Done a lot of things, but that system is amazing. Plus the way that they can encode stuff. And I had to do a show about movie film strip audio technologies because it's fascinating. But yeah, optical sound has been around for decades. Hey, Scott, welcome in. Sorry, I'm doing it again. I shouldn't have even tried. I'm going to be glued in the comments because that's where I'm reading you guys' input. I have a cassette player in a 2015 car. I got one installed. That's awesome. I know a guy who installed an 8-track player in his, actually, I think his is a 2015 car as well. Full audio book. Any new turntable reviews coming up? Yes. So there's this whole saga happening right now. There was a turntable that I was reviewing, and I had to stop production on that review and focus on something else for a couple of weeks. And I look to get that finished up soon and published. It's half done. And there's some other things coming down the pike as well. There's always new turntables on the horizon. So definitely more other non-turntable related things too. We've got a very cool cassette Walkman type of device coming up in the near future. The show that we're posting tonight is, I'll tell you guys, because like I said, this is the vinyl records. I don't have the Taylor Swift record anymore. It was a gift. I don't know if you ever saw. I think it was on that live from Denver show we did. Look at our last live. I talk about it. But we that was a gift for a family member. So it was really that's why we did it. But again, I don't have Taylor Swift records for my own consumption. But if it comes on, I wouldn't turn it off. I just probably wouldn't go seek out that music. But that's why I bought it. I have a short of me too. I may post that at some point. Scott says I have a Sony portable CD player like that one. I let my vet where I worked at have it so he can have music in the background when people are on hold. Oh, that's a good idea. That's cool. I remember I worked at a TV station once, and we had an old JVC CD changer that had like the cassette with the different stacked CDs in there, kind of like a car CD changer mechanism. And they would use that for the on-hold music. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing, subscribing, all that good stuff, appreciate it. 10 seconds of ESP. I think the way it works is you could shake it for 10 seconds without it skipping. In practice, if that works, I don't know. But eventually, years later, this one's a 20-second one. Eventually, they had 45 seconds. They don't put a number on it. So if you buy like a modern CD player, it's not going to say the title, just say. And it won't be like some huge advertised thing. Like it was a big marketing talking point on this, but it won't really be mentioned in detail. So, yeah. Okay, Rob says, what was the MASH technology all about? So I believe that was Panasonic's proprietary codec, I believe. I want to get my hands on a MASH, because all Panasonics were branded MASH. Like Yamaha, Natural Sound is what they call everything. Panasonic, everything was MASH when it came to CDs. And one thing I love about the Panasonics, I've never had one, but I've seen them, is they have a little button in the middle of the spindle, and you push it, and it actually ejects the disc up. And it's a simple but really cool mechanism. I've always wanted one of those. Never had one. But yeah, I believe it was a proprietary codec. 10 seconds kind of middle of the line. Yeah, I agree. I must have said 10 seconds when I was describing this. It's kind of hard for me to see it in this dimmer light, but this is the 20-second one. Yeah, there's weird stuff. You'll find mini DVDs, 3-inch CDs were a thing for a while. Shaped CDs, I've got a couple of those. I liked shaped CDs. I think those were cool. Old Radio says my mini disc saga took a bad turn in May. Well, I'm not the only one. Hey, John, welcome in. Oh, interesting. Okay, I'll have to check that up. Yeah, I definitely love my Beatles still. So I'll have to check that out. So far behind on comments, I'm sorry. Oh, Scott, that's awesome. Thank you so much. You're so kind. High MD. Yeah, I think that was the last version. This is before that. So this is NetMD. So this is almost the dying breath, but not quite. So this was within a year or so, the format was gone. It's thundering here, like a storm is brewing. Interesting, Scott. Hasn't been too stormy here in Orlando lately since the big one. It was all about iPods when I was in high school. Yeah, for me, iPods was like after college kind of a deal. I remember my first iPod was an iPod Shuffle, first gen, the gum stick one. And it was just like, how is this happening? How is sound? What is this? You know what I mean? It was so different. Apple's always wanted to be different. We're different just because we want to be different. But yeah, I did have that. I never had an iPod Classic. I have one now that was given to me as a gift, and but I never had. Those were way above my pay grade. I had third party. Like I remember RCA had a cool RCA brand. I'm sure it wasn't really RCA, but RCA branded MP3 player at Walmart for like $40. That was more my speed. Windows XP. Yeah, I remember 3.1. That dates me. I remember Apple II. I remember in school, our computers were Apple II. I remember DOS. Okay, I'm just that old, right? Old Radio says, I remember that attitude in the 90s. Yep. It was so, yeah, it was just a different world. We're in a completely different world now. These things are relics. They're artifacts. This is ancient history. The fact that some of us lived through it is beside the point. But yeah, I've got friends that missed this whole CD thing. Couldn't care less. In fact, that's why he gave me the CD player, because he's like, this is nice. Normally if somebody's into CD players, they wouldn't just give this away. But he's like, he has no emotional connection to it whatsoever. He knows I do. So he's like, hey, you want this thing? I'm like, yes. So early birthday present. That was really kind. Downloaded music from Napster and LimeWire. Remember Napster? I never really got into it that much. I remember it was a big deal. I remember John says I'm old enough that it was just records in high school, $2.99 and $3.29 at the local department store. Old Radio says I didn't play a record until 2002. I had them as a kid, so mid 80s, I was playing records. But by also about that time, as I got into like, when do you start getting into music as a kid? You know what I mean? Like you're like first, second grade, you don't care about that much. You know what I mean? It was like a toy. Like I'll play with a record player today, and then maybe you don't touch it for 2 months. But at some point, you're like, I want a Walkman, and I want to have a tape or two. I remember I had Technotronics, Michael Jackson's Bad, New Kids on the Block, the soundtrack to Cocktail, 6th grade. I remember that because it had Kokomo on it. I think that's all I had. I think I had like 5 tapes. In fact, I came across My mom saved a bunch of my old school papers from elementary school and gave them to me, which I was like, wow, you were saving all these? I have like this bundle. They're in a Cub Foods shopping bag. Remember Cub Foods? And they're a lot thicker than the grocery bags are these days. But yeah, like 500 pages of school reports and things. And there was one thing in there. I forget why we were writing this, but I had to say, talking about music or something. And I said, I have 5 tapes. Like I was proud of that fact. John says, I went full circle. Records, CDs, MP3s, back to records, and yes, cassettes in the car and the wall. Similar to me. Absolutely similar to me. Do I eat turkey at Christmas? Yes. If there's a turkey on, I mean, actually, let me take that back. We're more of turkey. Traditionally in my family has been turkey at Thanksgiving and ham at Christmas. Ham? No, not ham. Sorry. Okay. If you know that reference, then that's funny. Old Radio says, I'm just having fun recording random audio clips on cassette. Do you have old radios? Do you have one of those Talk Boys from Home Alone? Do you remember those things? It was like, I had one of those. I had one later than I should. I was too old to have this thing. But I remember mowing lawns, trying to get enough money to buy a Talk Boy. You could record your voice, play it back fast or slow. It was fun. Michelle, thank you for joining. Mariah Carey has been thawed, and she will be appearing here and there. Yeah, it was the first Christmas album I reached for. I just like it. I mean, it's a whole funny thing to people, but I just actually like the music. I have an RCA Tower rack CD player with built-in speakers on my main player. That's awesome. Nah, Mariah is still frozen solid for me. I'm not. It's fair enough, Joseph. Scott says, I remember making cassette tapes for a restaurant that had a 10-tape player, and I made 10 of them with music for background while people ate. That's cool. That'd be a fun project. Aaron, hey, I love your videos. Happy to see you live. Aaron, my friend, thank you so much for being there. Sorry for the delay in responding to your comment. I'm always like this on these lives. I'm always behind. A World War II themed restaurant? That's so cool. Oh, that must have been fun. There was a restaurant, I don't know if it's still there. It was in Colorado Springs, right by the airport. And they had like a KC-130 tank or something. No, it wasn't the KC-130. What was it? It was the plane that was based on a Boeing. Was it a Stratoliner? It had like, okay, it was, you know the B-29 Super Fortress? You know that plane with the rib cage, glass rounded nose. There was a civilian, or not a civilian. It was a civilian. Sorry, it was a civilian airliner version made off of that had like a double hole, where if you looked at it from the front, it went like this and kind of like that. No jokes. And it was based on that same design. Well, there was a military variant of that was a tanker, and this restaurant is in that airplane. There's also a building attached as well. That sounds like fun. Have Tommy Dorsey playing. That sounds good. My first CD player was a 14 battery portable dual powered unit. What? 14 battery? That's ridiculous. I knew some of the early systems took like an inordinate amount of batteries, but 14? That's ridiculous. You know, I had an Optimus, or was it Optimus? One of the Radio Shack brands CD player. I'm sure I put it on the show a couple of years ago. I donated it finally. And it was pre 1-bit DAC. It was, this stuff is all 1-bit DAC, and it says it on there. But the old 16-bit DAC, noise shaping technology, not quite as accurate, a little more distortion. Yeah, I had one of those older DACs on there, so I'm sure that would have had it as well. Now, modern CD players don't say, although I did see a new CD player that actually said a 1-bit DAC. Usually they don't say what DAC they have. I remember there was a store that had 20 boxes of cutout records for $1. Wow. Technotronics. All right, let me scroll down. Thing I miss most is when DVDs were new. I experienced DVDs the way you experience CDs. Yeah, fair enough. John says, I have my eye on a Dave Brubeck Christmas album on Amazon. That sounds cool. I love Dave Brubeck. I don't know if you saw it years ago. I still have the record. Where is that? I may have that over here, actually. Do I have that, or is it over there? I think it's over there. I have a very, very cool 50s Dave Brubeck. I think it's called the Lipstick record. It's a 78. It's like a 5-inch disc that was a premium for a lipstick advertisement that was done in the late 50s, and it's got some Dave Brubeck on it. Very cool. Yeah, I've got a couple Dave Brubeck. Great jazz music, absolutely. Matthew says, what do you personally think is the best way to listen to CDs? Portable CD player and headphones, or like on a full stereo system? It depends. It depends. I do have the 5 CD changer now. I never had that growing up, like I said. So this isn't for nostalgic purposes. It's just like it was cool and I always wanted one purposes. So I found one for $5. I could get away with a single disc because I'm not like putting in 5 discs and just letting them play all day like I do this guy with records. I'll actually load this up with a Reader's Digest set. Just let it play all day while I work. I don't do that with CDs as much. I could. I mean, that's the idea of a changer. But for me, I probably use my portables more. And you may be saying to yourself, why do you have an absurd amount of CD players? I do. And this is after we moved. I donated tons of them. But I kept my favorites. I just like them. They're fun. They're just fun. And so usually, like, at the end of the day, maybe if I go lay down in bed or I'll, sit on the couch, put some headphones on. I usually don't. I've tried traveling with CDs, thinking, well, it's portable, et cetera. But usually when I'm using a portable device, whether it be a Walkman, a boombox, a portable CD player, I'm usually just like doing the dishes or working in the garage or going for a walk or something. Not even that much. Usually if I'm traveling or going for a walk, I'm back on streaming mode. And I have an Apple Music account. I use it extensively. So that's just my personal use case. So for me, it's headphones and a portable device usually. Although I will listen to CDs. Probably about my overall music listening here in my main setup, it's probably a CD 25% of the time. Cassettes probably 10 to 15% of the time. Mini discs a lot less than that, and the vast majority is going to be and radio too. I have a tuner, an internet radio tuner. I don't use the internet radio as much as I want to. There's so much good content on there, but mostly it's vinyl. But there are times when I'll come in here, I won't even spin a record the entire day. I'll just listen to streaming only, or a CD only. Some days I don't listen to anything. If I'm having to, really focus on something, I don't even want background music on. D-cell batteries. Those were beasts. That must have been heavy. Yeah, Scott, I have DVDs too. And you know what? I don't feel compelled to replace them with Blu-rays. But Blu-rays are even not new anymore. Now it's ultra UHD discs, and pretty soon all physical media is just going to be gone. It's so weird to me to go to a Best Buy and there's no CDs or DVDs hardly at all, if at all. I remember the heart of Best Buy. Almost said Media Play. That was a great store too. But the heart of Best Buy was this massive center of the store was all CDs, all of it. The whole center thing, the aisle around the center part, the big center square in Best Buy, the whole center of it, 80% of the store was CDs. It was a CD store, and they had a small selection of refrigerators, stoves, microwaves, stereo equipment, a decent collection of stereo equipment, car stereos, TVs and stuff kind of lining the perimeter. Now you go in there and everything is mobile phones. The first thing you see when you walk in there is mobile phones, the Apple section, the Samsung section, the accessories, Then you've got all the Google Homes and the Bluetooths and the home assistants and the smart lights, the smart everything. And you're dating yourself and you're sounding old. I can't help it. I'm getting crotchety. I want to wave my old man cane in the air, and it's just the way I've become. Hopefully I'm with like-minded people. If you're not there yet, you'll get there, probably. Monty says, I'm so old that my first cassette recorder was the Shoebox Mono EL3302, and I loved it. Those were great. I remember shoebox recorders, especially classroom environment things. You know, we didn't have classroom record players as much when I was going to school. What we did have were cassette, booked in tapes, classroom tape players. I remember there was listening stations and little half circle tables and things, listening stations. And they had these caliphone type of shoebox players. And then there would be these hard, really tight and hard to open up, put your head in. In fact, if you let it slip and it hit your head, it would hurt. Blue and white plastic clamshell headphones that sounded awful. And you would listen to a program there. Oh, yeah. 2 generations of Brubeck. Brubeck is good stuff. Do you recommend any bag to carry a portable CD player? What would be the best thing? Well, I showed this earlier, this little neoprene sleeve. I've never had one of these until now. Let me slide out of frame here. I want to show you guys something. Some CD players now are coming, especially these ones from Klim. I love Klim portable CD players, but they come with these little hard shell cases. They're kind of rigid, but not completely. And these are great. And any round CD player, like this isn't a Klim CD player, this is Emerson, but in there perfectly. And that's a really nice thing. So I like these for like transporting it because it won't scratch it and it's pretty durable. For listening, I don't really have like a portable listening case anymore. I was talking about that earlier. Why is this so warm? I think it was sitting on my laptop. Like it was warm to the touch. I'm like, that's not good. I used to have, and we used to joke in school that they look like a purse. In fact, I had this auto shop teacher that says, what are you guys doing with those purses? But it was a very padded leatherette thing with a strap, and you would carry it around with a CD player in the top portion. You could unzip it a little bit and have, your earbuds or headphones, whatever. And then had room for like 3 or 4 CDs under it. So it was a pretty chunky thing, but it was it felt so cool to walk around. And for me, it was this player to walk around, sit there, get to class 5 minutes early and listen to some digital music. So premium. Oh my gosh. It felt so luxurious, felt so on top of the world. It was like, I have digital music and it's personal. And you know what? I've always liked a Walkman, a Discman. There's something about tuning the world out and putting on some headphones and listening to whatever. I listen to music, but I also listen to like old time radio on these things. I listen to stand-up comedy like Jeff Foxworthy and stuff. Many hours spent listening to Foxworthy on this. And just having private listening, set the volume the way you want. You're not bothering anybody. It's not impeding on anybody. The render is done. The new show, it renders done, so I can start uploading that and getting that ready. So that new video should be posted here in the next hour or so. Yeah, it's just fun. I don't know where I was going with that, but there you go. When I go to bed, I put on the big band channels on Pandora. Yeah, and that's just it too. Is there's so much good music out. Even if you don't have a paid account with like Apple Music or Spotify or Pandora, you can just put on one of the radio stations and just listen to the playlists and things. YouTube has so much music. Yeah. Suncoast in the mall. Oh, don't get me started on Suncoast. I love Suncoast. For me, what I remember buying at Suncoast were premium VHS tapes. This has been like 95, 96, and 97, right before I got into DVD. I was a fairly early adopter. I got my first DVD player in 97. It was a Zenith. It cost me $400. I had to save up for it. But before that, I remember, especially because I was in film school, I remember going there to find like Hitchcock films or you know, whatever kind of film. You could find more obscure things there. You could find just premium. You could find widescreen releases at Suncoast. If you went to just like Walmart, you're just going to find pan and scans. Most people that didn't live through that have no idea what a pan and scan is. But if you wanted a widescreen edition of something, you could get it at Suncoast. Then they had, you know, kinds of props and posters, and I could just close them. I could smell it. It smelled like popcorn. I think they made popcorn up front. I remember they had TVs around playing movies, and there was like an echo to it for some reason. Very nostalgic. I miss it. I'm such a nostalgic person. You know, you talk about retro things, you talk about your memories, but for me, it's an emotion. There's a deep emotional connection to a lot of this stuff. Yeah. Some stuff isn't a deep, like Patsy Cline is something I don't have like a deep historic emotional, you know, connection that I, you know, have this, you know, nostalgic feeling about. It's just an artist, a music that I've learned to appreciate, you know, recently. But some stuff is very nostalgic above anything else. It just depends. DirecTV from Sony. Oh, from the Best Buy. Yeah. Never had satellite TV in my life. Never had a DVR. I think I've talked about those things too. Just skipped over all that stuff. I don't know why. Just for different reasons. Life hits you at different times, you know, starting a family and stuff. I'm not going to be, you know, investing in, you know, anything but the essentials. So didn't have some of those niceties at that time. But yeah, skipped over DirecTV, skipped over DVRs, and never did any of that stuff. But some people did, and that's where their nostalgic feelings are, and that's great. Saw a great video shot in 1991 of a guy looking for CDs and Laserdisc movies. And Laserdisc is another one. Never had that. That was the rich people's video format. I remember picking them up and being like, this is incredible. I have one now. One of my favorite movies, Grumpier Old Men. It was in the record section because that happens a lot. They're 12 inches, the same, you know, dimensions as a vinyl record. Sometimes those will get stored. Usually I'm like, holy cow, it's the motherload of soundtrack albums. Then I realize they're just Laserdisc. So I picked, it's like $1. I picked it up. You know, I don't have a Laserdisc player. I'm not going to get one. But I remember looking at Laserdisc movies in like media play for some reason, especially, and thinking how do you have to be in order to afford this? This is incredible. Hi-Fi version of Percy Faith's Christmas 1954, the CD version. That's so cool. I like some of the early CDs, which were literally just dubs of albums, had the same album artwork and everything. Guy I knew had the first Star Wars movie on Laserdisc. Wow. Yep. And people do get used to stuff. And if you don't go through it, you have no emotional connection. Like the whole 8-track thing, this is another one that I have no nostalgia for. I have no emotional connection to this format. To me, it's just a curiosity. And just never had that growing up. I don't have any emotional connection to them at all. I got into that stuff because of you guys. Percy Faith. Yeah, I love that stuff. Joseph says, music is my main go-to whenever I'm in a bad mood or someone makes me angry. I turn on my music and zone out in my own world for a while. Music is a perfect way to calm. It's a universal language too. You know what I mean? Like you could be listening to a piece of music in another language and it can still communicate. And it's a powerful language, it really is. What are we going to do when physical media is gone entirely? That's a great question. Be sad? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it'll be gone entirely because there'll still be people like you and me that value that. But I don't know. I still feel like the vinyl revival is cool and it's fun, but I feel like we're riding a wave, and I don't think it's going to last forever. I think vinyl records are going to fall out. They're not going to be trendy someday. They're not going to be cool again. They're going to be relegated, and then they're probably going to fade out a second time, and maybe they'll never come back. Obviously, we don't want that to happen, but there's a lot bigger problems. My wife and I were just, compared to what I was dealing with this time last year, These are happy problems. Praise God for the problems I have in my life right now, to be able to ponder things like that. I haven't made a big deal about the things I went through, but it was a challenging year medically. Let me just put it that way. God has been very good to me, and I'm thankful for every moment I have and problems that I have now. Thank God for them. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to ponder, you know. And then you got the whole thing about digital stuff. Digital stuff is, I mean, when I say digital, streaming, like streaming music, streaming movies. If you don't have, a lot of people don't have any DVDs or videos or anything because they watch all their music on Disney Plus, on Hulu. They don't own anything. They don't own any of that. They have a license to view it. And if you have music streaming services like Apple Music, Spotify, you don't own any of your music. You own nothing. You have a license to use it, to listen to it. And even when we were before streaming picked up and took over, and we were buying digital files through iTunes, we did not own those entities either. We didn't even own those files. We had a license to use them. There have been a few artists traditionally who have really stood up against this. Garth Brooks is very against that model of, he's all about owning your music and media. He doesn't even release his stuff to streaming, and you have to buy physical discs and things like that. And, there's something about owning your music. And to me, it's not about hoarding or being materialistic. It's just about, purchasing a thing and having a copy, because, there's discipline involved. You have to earn money, or you have to be gifted money. You have to seek out the physical media. You have to acquire it, shipped to you, picked up in store, drive it home. You have to take care of it, and it's not going to last forever. And it's, it can break and it can be stolen. And there's, every time that it works and you're able to use it is a blessing. And there's something about that cycle of ownership that is sort of intrinsically within many of us, I believe. Whereas other people that didn't grow up that way, it's a different mindset. To them, music is something you get access to and hear, but they have no desire to own a copy, to own it. And it's a different mindset. You know what I mean? It's a different mindset. Yeah, an emotional connection. Old radios you hit the nail on that. It's a big part of it. Did you tape from radio? Yeah, we were talking about that earlier, Stephen. I would call the radio station. There were two hip hop stations that played, rap music, pop music. They played Michael Jackson. It was more pop with hip hop than what a hip hop station is now, which is just solid rap. That was usually the kind of station. I was never a hardcore rock and roll guy. So in Denver, it was KS 107. No, KS 102 rap station. There's 104.3 was the other one. 106.7 KBPI was the rock station. So what I would do is I would usually, if I had a friend over for a pizza party or a sleepover or something, and what would happen is there would be this whole thing where let's call the radio station and request a song, and then once you made that request, you would then wait for it to play, and that was the way you could get a copy of it for free. It would take an hour and a half for them to actually play it. Sorry, I'm getting tired. I'm having a harder time thinking through. But you would get a copy that way. So yeah, you'd record the radio for like an hour and a half, hoping you get a copy of your song. I don't do it anymore. I did tape before I moved here. I did tape a cassette tape off the radio of KOSI, Cozy 101, back in Denver during Christmas, because they have a great Christmas playlist. I've got it tapped into it now on my digital internet radio, but I wanted to make sure that I had the ability after we moved, and it was obviously a Denver station terrestrial radio, so I did do that. But usually, no, I don't do that. All right, I'm going to finish up here, you guys. I need to do some more work tonight. I got to get this video posted. Like I said at the outset, I've been just having a blast. I love hanging out with you guys. You guys mean the world to me. If you haven't subscribed, please do think about doing that. Thumbs up on the video if you haven't done it already. That always helps us out so much. Yeah, exactly, Scott. We'll have ours. You know, hopefully they won't come for ours. I'm jealous of Tecmon's 4-track deck all in one. Yeah, you know, a friend of mine has more of a knowledge of 8-track and 4-track than I do, and he and I at one point had talked about investing in a 4-track, 8-track player. There's multiple players that'll do both formats. You have a 45 of Jeff Foxworthy? That's cool. That's really cool. Scott, thanks for being here, man. Appreciate it. I got to hear what a tape sounds like. Yeah, those particles are yeah. And every time you play a tape, it's one pass less. There are many artists that. It's true. Absolutely, Joseph. You're right. John, you too. Old Radio, Steven, everybody, just a huge thank you for being there. Have a safe and wonderful week. Be on the lookout for a video coming your way in the next couple of hours. And thanks for being here. Love you guys. Have a good one. Take care. See you next time. And I have to say, it's happy record hunting. See you next time.